Hello? 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 Does this work? Test, 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 test. Test, test, test. Test, 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 test.
The green light's on, but I can't hear anything over this. One, 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 one. No. One, 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 one. Test, 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 test. One, one. Nothing at all in there. Sounds like it's not like
I know, but it's got
to the speaker. I don't know. Yeah, that's what I figured. Test, test. What? No. See if there's AA batteries on the shelf inside, Doc. 1, 1, 1. One, one, one.
Test, test.
Where does it sync up to?
It's wireless, Bluetooth with this.
Yeah.
It should go through here
Yeah.
into those speakers. See, it's picking up some kind of volume.
Test, test, test. Test, test, test. Test, test, test.
Excuse me. Hey, for the microphone, what I was told is they can hear on the live stream. It's just not coming here.
Oh, they can hear the mic on the live stream
Yeah.
and not here.
So it's some kind
That's
of
what I figured, but so really, people
just
have to
not
be.
connecting to the speakers or something like that.
Yeah, so they would have to.
All right. Apologize for this. We'll just try to get it connected internally in a second. So they, how can they hear the mic? Tell Junior they can hear the mic on the live stream, but not on the speakers in here.
He's not even answering.
See, when he set it up, he probably like.
One, 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 one. Hello. No. Online they could hear it perfect because the guy, I guess one of the sons or son-in-law just came out. Says we hear it beautifully on the stream, but nothing in the chapel. I've been hitting it shut and rebooting, changed. It's on the stream. They could, yeah, it's on at the computer here, the iPad, I should say. I got all the rules up. Cabinet. What do I do? Go up or down? Right. Oh. One. All right, channel 5, I got it. All right, so that you're making?
Test, test. Testing. Test, test. Test. Test.
Just when you initially
Test, 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 test.
Test. Test, test. Test.
Test, test, test. Ah, yeah. Ready? Sorry, we have a little bit of a late start today. Um, so we are here to honor and remember my mother, Saroj Sandberg. If you're not here for that, you might be in the wrong place. You could leave. We have a great lineup of speakers today. We have 8 speakers. Afterwards, if you want to say something, you can come up to the mic and say something. There is also a program on all the chairs and on the side that give a little bit of history of my mom. And I think without further ado, I'll introduce the first speaker, my brother David Sandberg, and he'll have a few words.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for coming. It's really nice to see everybody and all these familiar faces, and we're honoring someone who sometimes you go to these things and obviously the wrong occasion for all of us to get together, but this is life. But sometimes you go to these things and there's silos where nobody knows anyone, and in this case, so many know each other, and that's representative of Mom. She just mixed people, who she was, anyone around. It didn't matter your race, your religion, your age, who you were, how you thought. You know, I would, middle of dinner time or coming dinner, these 4 people are coming over for dinner. Great. Doesn't matter. You know, it would mix. It didn't matter. You know, we'd mix in totally different groups. It didn't matter. And we have that here today, and it's very nice. You know, Mom passed on June 23rd, and I'll go a little out of order on some of this, but that's all right. Other people can clean me up later. She lived a long life. It's been a little surreal for us. We're not crying all the time. It comes in pockets. Hasn't fully hit us because we spent so much time with her that it's hard to recognize that she's gone, because in a lot of ways she's still with us. What I would say is she lived well. She always had company and love around her. Not just the family, but everyone here, those live streaming. You know, they say it takes a village, and all of us collectively were the village, and it was a good village. And she loved that. She really loved every single person. Anytime anyone came by, instant smiles, so happy that anyone was there, and that's who she was as well. She passed a little over a month ago. She was 87. You know, we used a little technology on our diabetes, I'll admit, to probably extend that out a bit. She had some health issues that happen in life, but she survived them well. And what I can tell all of you is when she passed peacefully, without pain, with a ton of love and people all around her. You know, it's as well as it could have been, is what I would say, and I'm grateful for that as well. you know, she had an amazing life. You know, I'll cut right to it. You know, being a dark-skinned woman coming over to America to be a physician in the 60s could not have been easy. I think I have struggles in life. I mean, there's no way anything I would do could ever compare to that. She did that. She, God knows how, marries a Jewish guy, or he chases her down. Ultimately, after her mom, who was, and I understand because of religion, said over my dead body when he said he wanted to marry her, even though they were dating. And yet it still happened. You know, you get 4 kids and then 7 grandkids, and frankly, it's a lot more than that because whether you know it or not, all of you are Sandbergs. So she's got a lot more than that, and she always did. She was, you know, the rare breed, like a lot of you, that came over and come with the older mentality of just working so hard. You know, this generation, including myself, we're softer than the older ones. She would work her butt off during the day and come home, and her happy time was getting dinner ready for us. And we had home-cooked meals every night and dragging us to all kinds of social events. And who she was never so uptight about things needing to be perfect or having to have certain things certain ways. She was able to adjust and roll with it, and so it didn't matter. We'd go up to Toronto every summer. We'd, you know, make our drives to Florida, and of course, you know, Dad wants to stay in Days Inn because whatever, but so be it. But we did it, right? 6 of us in a car driving to Florida every year. But I mean, whatever. We jammed in and never any problem. We went to Great Barrington every Christmas and had our family there too. And so we got, you know, it was everyone. And, you know, she loved her sister. She loved her sister's husband. She loved her sister's husband's family, and so forth and so forth. And that's who she was. All of our friends were regulars at the house, and she loved that as well. She was very sweet. She was smart. She was a really good student, way better, a million times better than I was. Jane and Steve were good students. Michael and I were But you know what? Even on that, she didn't give us a 3rd degree. I got a wonderful kid here, and I'm checking his grades and making sure he's on top of things and whatnot, like we all do these days. She didn't care. She was, you know, I'll admit, I got a lot of times teacher feedback. I remember this with underachiever, if only he applied himself, things like that, right? A lot of that. And she never gave me a 3rd degree on any of that. And she didn't check if we did our assignments or anything. She let us live. And if we got something bad, okay. But then she got over it, and it was more about who we were as people and her family, and that's what mattered. And so it was very nice and easy to have that trust and that love. Without any of that tension or insecurity or any of that stuff. We had friends that were coming over regularly for over a decade for Sunday meals. If they didn't come, she thought, "What's wrong?" You know, and so forth. And she really was amazing and dragged us. And we have a million aunties and uncles. To this day, they're all our aunties and uncles, and always will be. But that's a function of her, and, you know, you look back and we're grateful for all of that. Didn't want to live an isolated life, didn't want to make excuses on why to stay alone and do nothing. Said, look, we're in this world, let's go live it. She was a wonderful cook. You all know that, right? She's cooked for pretty much everyone here, I think. And she was amazing, and we all loved that, but that was also an expression of her care and her love. She loved making things for people. She put her heart into all of that, and that's part of kind of our family history too. You know, it's God. Who was saying yesterday? Nidhi was saying that she missed her salad dressing. I've heard that from like a dozen people. Like, who hears that about salad dressing, right? But yes, but you know, she was a very special person to all of us. Actually got old. She got diabetes in her history. So first of all, she had a practice. She, after Dad had a stroke when I was about 13, and Dad was a surgeon, but he didn't have the same control anymore. So then he shared a private practice as internist with a family practice with Mom. They worked in the Bronx. They had the Manhattan and all these other offices, but they ended up going to the Bronx, dealing with a lot of Medicaid, Medicare, and lower income. And I always admire that too. It wasn't always about the money and other things. It was about wanting to help people, and that's what she cared about. Even later in life, after she retired early at about 55. I think she regretted it. And even when she was like 72, I remember her saying like, God, I want to be a doctor. She wanted to volunteer herself, but with the malpractice and other things, she couldn't do that. But that wasn't about money. That was all to be not paid. She just wanted to help people and take care of people. And I think with Mom, she didn't need things. She didn't need the accolades. She didn't need the limelight. She didn't need to keep up with the Joneses. She couldn't care less about her car versus someone else's car, her house versus someone else's house, jewelry, any of that stuff. She just was authentic and genuine as to who she was, and it was very sweet and wonderful. And she was a very special, sweet lady. And as she got older, she had some health issues. She got diabetes at 55. I'm sure all of you remember. Despite all the love and good things I'm saying, I'm sure you remember the battles and the feistiness too. Particularly, she loved her desserts and her Indian food. And I know that all of you remember me fighting with her on like her blood sugar and things like that, especially in the days before you had technology and you'd take random guesses on, what it was at, and she'd be regularly sky high and whatever. And doctors do make the worst patients, by the way, and she's a perfect example of that. But so be it. She loved seeing everybody here. She loved having 7 grandkids. She's survived by that. You add Vivek's kids, it's 9. And you add all the rest of yours, and it's a lot more than that. And she just loved that. We would have so many people at the house so often. We'd have even random things. I'm thinking about Passover Seders. I've got, bunch of guys in the corner there, and got a Korean guy and a Catholic guy and whatever, and they're all reading together and just making food after and all this stuff. I mean, just really wonderful moments and memories with her. As she aged, she still was wonderful. She didn't, she wasn't working as a physician, but she was working the kitchen, and she was working socially, and she loved her group with her ladies' lunches and tea and cards and 21 card rummy and all of that for so many years. And she really loved seeing Mossy. We grew up seeing Mossy. They were in Armonk for a lot of our lives, 20 minutes away. We would see them all the time, at least a couple times a month. Mossy and Mom were always the best of buddies. Mossy was the best sister. And Uncle Sabash we lost in January, but he was the best uncle too. Very special. She was close with everyone. Dad's stepmother, Nana, after his dad passed, she was our Nana. We loved seeing her, right? Our Uncle Larry, we loved them. It didn't matter the extensions, all these lines of blood or whatever. It's all one thing at the end of the day, and that's how we grew up too, so we feel very much the same way. As she aged, further, we wanted to take care of her, right? Our dad had passed 22 years ago. And so I got married and then moved down to Florida. And so I told Mom, you're coming to Florida with me. And guess what? Even though she had obviously so many people here, such a rich life here, but she knew that connection wasn't going to go anywhere. She said, okay, pack some bags, and we go down to Florida. And all of a sudden, she's down there with me, and we're kind of doing the snowbird thing, half the year up, down, half the year up, and so forth. But no problem. And then she had a wonderful family. We've got Gladys and Blake here, and Karina's watching, but their whole family was wonderful to her. Always, and made her, it was just even more and more family. And just anywhere she went, she built connections and family in a really wonderful way. And we're in a life and world where people get anxious over different things. They overthink different things. Mom was just so authentic. She didn't hold anything back there. She wasn't not outspoken and judgy. She just was accepting of everything, and it was all okay. She loved her kids. I'll admit, I took, she was a combination of new age and being the strong woman at an early time, but also very much with her tradition. So she wasn't very religious, but she respected everyone's religion. She definitely loved her Indian culture, even though she wasn't religious. She was a Jain, but not a practicing Jain. And And, you know, we took advantage of certain things. First, you know, there was a lot of things cultural. We would go to the Budgeons and get dragged to all of those. And, you know, I'm sure a lot of you know what trouble we were. She had 4 kids that were fighting all the time. Shayna, not so much, but 3 boys fighting and disturbing everything always. You know, the Budgeons are kind of a religious thing you do on weekends and a way of congregating together. And we'd be in a side room organizing World Wrestling Federation fights and stuff like that, you know, and clotheslining guys and the other poor Indian kids that were beating up. It's just rough. And despite this, we'd cause trouble all the time, everywhere we went. But she took it. And I'm also, what do you expect if you have 4 kids in less than 5 years? You know what you're getting. But she dragged us everywhere. Even though we were trouble, she dragged us everywhere. She loved her kids. You know, I took advantage of being the firstborn, and even though we weren't religious, you know, technically firstborn, you know, son in Indian culture means something. So that was my bragging right versus my siblings when I needed it. You know, Steve would always try and have his rebellion. That's why he's wearing the culture today, the pajamas, right? For a little, you know, trying to gain favor even now. You had Michael always in her ear, and I got to tell you, even in his later years, Michael was the best companion. He would just come and just talk Mom's ear off and give her updates about the entire world and everything going on there, and always loved to do that. And it was honestly very cute and endearing to see that. And then her Shayna Mana, who loved to, you know, snuggle up with her in bed, and her little sidekick too. So, you know, it was a good experience, and I have to say, you know, we say that Mom probably got more kisses than anyone you could imagine, because not only us, but all the grandkids. I mean, she just got smothered, but she would love that. And it was, you know, for all of us, it was very nice to see that type of thing happening too. Really wonderful woman. And then, you know, the care side, you know, as you get older, it's not easy, and we all know that. And we had to find care, and we got very lucky, and we have some of those caregivers today. It started with Nancy, who's not here, but she was wonderful. And then we had Marika, who is here, and Marika was amazing. And then we got to Florida, and we had a couple rounds of different people, because, again, it's not easy to find. You know, if you think about it, it's a job, but you need to find people who it's not a job to, because it's someone you care about so much. So who can you trust that's going to treat your mom with the love that you would when you're not around, right? And we have Vanessa right there. Vanessa's next to Austin, right in the middle, and she spent 75% of the last 2.5 years, 3/4 of all of our family dinners and overnights, she was with us, taking care of Mom. And literally, you know, Mom went in the hospital several times. She would battle with the loudmouth racist patients, sharing a room if that happened, all that stuff. I mean, she fought for Mom tooth and nail, and really is family for life as well. She's a Sandberg as well, and her kids are too. So, I mean, we were very lucky. We called it the dream team, but we had amazing care for Mom in so many ways, and it did make a difference. It made life easier and warmer and better too, and we're very grateful for that. We had listen, this is a very special person, and it's not easy. And again, even now, you know, it's it's at random moments where we choke up, and then we're okay, and then we choke up, and then we're okay. And, you know, it's 5 weeks in, it'll take a while, and I still choke up, and I know we all do over our dad, and that's 20 years ago, so it doesn't necessarily go away. But we're very grateful to Mom and everything she did for us, and the example she set. You know, you don't always think about that example when you're growing up, but when you become somebody, you realize that's a function of who they were and how they were, and giving us that stability and those values, teaching us that, and setting the example that why wouldn't you want to give? You feel good when you give. You don't need to take. If you just give and share, that's who she was completely too, and it was very special, and we feel very fortunate to have had that. I made a couple notes and I went off script, so let me just see what I missed, if anything. I didn't. Okay, MC, Steve, thank you.
Thank you, David. The next speaker will be my cousin Nidhi. Nidhi, where are you? She's coming. So Nidhi is, how to explain it? Long lost cousin. Saroj's cousin's daughter.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Devi. I had the honor of Saroj calling me her niece. We all knew Saroj to be so warm, fun, loving, and unbelievably sorry. We all knew Saroj to be warm, fun, loving, and unbelievably strong. I knew her as I was growing up in the UK. I would come and stay in Scarsdale with the Sandbergs in my summers. Her and Uncle Seymour treated me as their own, even to the point that one year I got an allowance with the other Sandberg kids. The thing I remember most about her was that she had the belief that anything was possible. When I was applying for my residency in the US, I was struggling with the uncertainty of getting a spot. It wasn't until she told me one day, Nidhi, I know you'll get something, that it occurred to me that it was actually possible. I could actually get something. Fast forward a few years later, I had moved here, and she and Uncle Seymour became my parents here. So much so that Saroj was among the first to meet my now husband, Ed. She adopted him into the family immediately. It meant so much to me, but it was just what she did. It was just who she was. I've learned so much from her about family, friendship, and what it means to be a strong woman. I hope to continue her legacy by emulating her strength, her ability to love unconditionally, and her belief that anything is possible with my family. I'm honored to be in this room with all of you, and I'm so fortunate and grateful to have felt her love. Thank you.
Thank you, Nidhi. And the next speaker is going to be my Auntie Sonia, who is one of my mom's oldest friends in the United States. We spent so many summers, so much time with her, and I'll let her tell you the rest. Do you want to come up here? Do you want me to bring the mic?
It's okay. I trust you anyhow. Well, I mean, Saroj.
Hold on.
Okay. Well, Saroji was introduced to us by her cousin Shokat, who was my husband Carl's best friend when they were in university together. And she soon became my sister in my own eyes, the sister I never had. And she was my sister. Not quite like Norma, but anyhow, my first memory of Saroj was when she visited us in Cummington, Massachusetts, where I was teaching at the Cummington School of the Arts. As we were living in a primitive house in the woods, we thought she would want the comfort of being by herself in a small cottage close by. She arrived at our house in the early morning, visibly shaken. Her bed had collapsed, mice had nibbled her toes, and she envisioned lions and tigers roaming around outside the cottage. So she decided, and we decided, it would be much better if she would come into our crazy, chaotic household where our 4 daughters were little kids. it soon became clear to Dr. Saroj Devi that she would try anything and everything. When Nina took her skiing, Saroj was totally undaunted. When Nina first took her to lunch, Saroj very gingerly tried a piece of hamburger. But she never lost her Indian identity. When she decided to return to India and to set up her practice in Dehradun, she took a big car, I think it was a big Buick, and a dishwasher, which of course could never operate in India, in Dehradun. But apparently her relatives moved in pretty quickly with her as she established her practice. And then Seymour went to India to marry her, and my only memory from that was that she was overwhelmed by some flames. They sent a picture of Saroji being overcome by flames as part of the wedding ceremony. When she was in India, Carl and I received all of her mail, a lot of which had to do with the research that she had done on nutrition at Columbia University. Then we were together so many times, and I don't remember every one of them, but I remember many of them, especially when you big kids were very, very little. And Carl would set you up outside our house in Great Barrington and try to encourage you to make your own toys with old pieces of wood and whatever tools he thought might not be too dangerous for you to use. But all of you decided to do something very different with your lives. And I think you became very different to our four girls, but we stayed together as a family. There are a few random memories I remember. Saroji stayed overnight in our house in Brooklyn with a cousin, and we had made a mildly spiced Indian dish. And when Carl and I got to the kitchen in the morning, we found Saroji and her cousin stirring the dish with a lot more spices. Then I remember Shayna's bat mitzvah, which I thought was amazing, because Seymour, on one part of the table was all the Jewish delicatessen stuff, and on the other side of the table was all the wonderful Indian stuff. Very different, but wonderful cuisines both. And I remember at Saroj, the reception for Saroj, for Shayna's bat mitzvah, that there was a lot of noise from somebody making noise on an instrument, and I would go and turn it down, and Saroj would immediately go and turn it up. So she really loved noise and singing and dancing. Saroj often came to Brooklyn for the Pancaldo girls' various birthday celebrations for years and years and years. And we were all part of the family, basically. I remember once when Susie, our daughter Susie, was working in Tuscany for many years. Saroji came. We invited her to spend a week there, and right outside the door of one of the houses where we stayed, there was a wonderful plum tree, and Saroj and I managed to eat every single plum off the tree, providing the owner the possibility of making plum jam. But we didn't worry about that. And Saroj kept making phone calls. I assume she was calling her kids, and it turned out she said she was calling her stockbroker because she had to advise him I thought that was pretty amazing. Um, then I remember one wonderful celebration in your house in Scarsdale, and I remember David grilling hot dogs and hamburgers, and inside was this table laden with wonderful Indian food, most of which probably Saroji had cooked. Anyhow, there's so many memories I could go on forever, but I won't. I was happy to see Saroji about a year and a half ago. I went to Florida to the wonderful house that David and you have all created. And I was so impressed by the respect that you all showed Saroji and the care that you took of her. But in addition, I was so moved by the fact that the grandchildren had the same kind of respect that their parents had towards Saroji. You really created and have created and keep creating the village that is all part of your lives as a family. And I'm so happy that we can share some of that with you, our family, the 4 Pancaldo girls. So thank you all. Okay.
Okay. I'm next, actually. My name is Stephen. I'm Saroj's second son. And I'm going to first read something from my Uncle Larry. So Larry is my father's stepbrother. So they had the same father, same nutty father, different nutty mothers. Larry lives in Colorado now. He couldn't be here today, but he sent a note. Read through it. Larry says, I was living out of town, and my folks weren't big on letters or phone calls, so I missed all the drama. I knew that Seymour had married a woman from India, another physician, but not about the courtship that spanned 3 continents and 2 oceans. When I came to visit, I met a quiet, reticent, shy woman who seemed to keep her thoughts to herself. You laugh now, but that's what I remember of our first meeting. And her beauty, as in, how did Seymour get such a beautiful woman? I didn't know her well enough to think beautiful, intelligent woman. I came to New York for a few months in 1973. David was on the scene and Stephen on the calendar. Seymour was looking for a house for the family. He asked me to help with some demographic research. Research is something I'm good at, and it helped him decide on Scarsdale. He talked to me sometimes about what kind of dad he wanted to be, and I understood that Saroj was equally part of the process. She embraced me as part of the family, just as years later she embraced my wife, without fuss or question. It was a facet of the emotional authenticity that she shared with Seymour, and another of her successes passed along to her children. It wasn't until 1979, when I began a 10-year stay on the East Coast, that I got to know her better. The quiet, reticent person was gone. Maybe it was the years of dealing with an equally strong-willed partner, plus 4 strong-willed offspring underfoot. I caught glimpses, mostly from snippets of conversations over the years with her old friends, the Pancaldos, that there was a backstory I never knew, professional accomplishments, and a ferocious overcoming of obstacles. Where's Julia? She's supposed to help me with this. The ferocity and intensity that I saw directly was in the kitchen. It was how she relaxed and enjoyed the benefits. Over the years, there were also benefits of love, kindness, and good advice when I needed them. Thank you, Saroj. All right, now I'm going to try to say something. I don't know how much I'll get through it. Julia may step in. Okay. We really hit the jackpot with both of our parents. I can't imagine two people who are more selfless, who lived and breathed for the kids more than ours. We grew up in a house filled with love. And I speak for my siblings. I think we're all humbled and grateful to have them as parents. Julia's mother reminded me when she first met my mom that my mom said to her, and I remember when she did it, she held her hands and looked her in the eye and she said, "For me, family is everything." And she did that. I remember thinking, first of all, what a mom thing to say, like something that she would just say. But also, what a strange way to introduce yourself to somebody. Like that's how you introduce yourself, but that's completely authentic, and that's really, my mom was always authentic. Other things she used to say, mom things, she said kind of different versions of, there's nothing like a mother's love for her children, and there's nothing like the bond between a mother and her children. And also, very, very things that my mom would say. And it's funny, when you hear them growing up and you it's just kind of like, but it's later on you realize like how deep she felt that, and how genuinely. There was a time like a few years ago, well, a long time ago actually, when we were probably in our 20s, the five of us went out. So it was after my father passed away. And we went out to dinner, and I remember my mom was kind of quiet during the dinner. And then, I don't know, afterwards, the next day or later that day, she said to me, she said, "You know what I was thinking that whole time?" I said, "What?" I said, I was just thinking, did these people come out of my body? Did I make these people? And she said, I couldn't believe it. I was just looking at you guys and thinking, I can't believe they came out of my body. She always had a weird way of making a fist. But she was so proud, and amazed that she made us. Another thing about her, and I think a lot of people know, she liked to party. So she liked to throw parties. She liked to go to parties. She really liked to be in the middle of the action, whatever the action was, and she really enjoyed chaos around her, quite frankly. In some ways, I don't know if she encouraged it. I think my dad definitely encouraged it. She just did nothing to abate it. So it was going on, it was happening, and she was happy to have it. So I brought her, I would bring her, I think we all brought her to so many different things, and sometimes I'd show up to something and people would say, you brought your mom? And I'd say, yeah, that's right. And David, she used to go to beer pong parties, keg parties at David's apartment. But she just liked to be in the middle, and funny, Uncle Larry mentioned she was very shy and reticent. And I think that's how she was at first. So when she'd go to these different venues with us, she was generally pretty quiet. And it was only afterwards that you found out, she was a bulldozer. I mean, she was. I used to think of her as a volcano wrapped in a hurricane with electricity shooting out. I mean, she was a real doer. So the amount of things that she got done, the things that she did for us, it's amazing. One thing I'm really grateful is I have siblings that were able to see all those things and appreciate it. I think David mentioned she loved cooking, but she loved food. That's something that unfortunately she kind of passed along to me. The other thing she loved was travel. She came with me to Australia twice. She came with me to Italy. We drove through. We went to Monaco. She came with me to Fiji. I remember in Fiji, at one point, we got into a bit of an argument over something stupid. And so she got up and she left. And we were at a hotel and she left. And I waited a couple minutes and then I went out to look for her. And she didn't leave the hotel because she ran into her one weakness, which was dogs. And Fiji was full of stray dogs. And so she just stood at the doorway of the hotel and she couldn't cross the street. she couldn't go. So, I would apologize for getting into an argument, but we got into a lot of arguments. There is nobody that will ever drive you as nuts as your parents. Maybe siblings, close second. Kids after that. Wife, no. I tell you, I'm going to tell you a couple of stories. So, first of all, I want to tell you a story that she told when my father passed away. I just thought it was such an adorable story. So, my parents met at the VA hospital. They're both working there. This is what I remember of my mother's story. So, it took my father several months to get the courage to ask her out. And then he went to pick her up, and she showed up, and she was wearing a sari. And my father never noticed that she always wore a sari under her lab coat. So I went to pick her up, and she was wearing a sari, and he said, what are you wearing? Because I'm guessing he had never seen a sari before at that point. And she said, this is a sari. And he said, okay, well, why are you wearing that? And she said, because I'm an Indian woman, and this is what I wear. And after that, he insisted that she would always wear a sari when they went out. I found the paper that she wrote at Columbia, and I think if there are doctors here, you guys probably know it. It's the effect of odd and even-numbered medium-chain fatty acids on glucose uptake by adipose tissue. What I remember of her is a little gross, but that research involved removing a little piece of fat from the testes of mice and rats and analyzing that. And so that was the research that she did. She was also, while she's at Columbia, this was the late 60s, so there was a lot of, the hippie stuff, I don't know, flower power. There were a lot of protests, really big protests going on at Columbia. And so she told me, like, she heard about this thing that people were smoking called marijuana, and so she wanted to try some. And so she was living in Harlem, right, in the 60s, not really like, it's not like it was today, it's a very dangerous place. But she went out to try to find some. And so she left her dorm, and she's walking around the streets to try to find some. And she couldn't find any, so she went home. And that was her experimentation with drugs. Another thing, when she took that car to India, she took that big Buick, what she told me, what I remember is, she's really famous for having this big American car in India. And so people used to just like climb into her car, and she'd just drive through town and people would climb in. And I kind of, in my head, I kind of picture it as like a convertible, and it's like a party car, and people just jumping in and out, music blasting. I know she also brought some bell-bottom jeans and some, Western clothes. And I think my Mira auntie, one of her aunties in India, I think she was growing up, and she would see my mom wearing her bell-bottoms in India in the 60s, and it kind of makes me think, what an icon, what a figure for other women to see this person go to the States, come back, be doing these different things, not acting in the way that you're probably supposed to act in India as a woman at that time. Just looking through my stories. She really, she spoiled us a lot. And I think another thing I remember, I went out to dinner with her one time, just the two of us. We spent a lot of time talking about the other kids, their behavior mostly. And at one point she said to me, oh, so-and-so says that you guys are spoiled. I won't say who it was because they might be here right now. There's like 20 people think that it's them. But she said, oh, so-and-so thinks you're spoiled. And I said, yeah, we are. And she said, well, you are? I said, yeah, we're completely spoiled. And she was really surprised. And she said, well, how are you guys spoiled? And so I started listing the ways that we're spoiled. And I only got through like a couple things. And she said, well, they're my kids. I'll spoil them if I want to. So I think she kind of knew. Another thing I always remember, she was always calling calling me to find out, when am I coming? Stevie, are you coming? Are you coming Saturday? Are you coming Friday? And I'd say, oh, I'm coming. I'm going to come on Saturday. Why not Friday? Well, I'm going out with friends. Well, why don't you bring your friends here? So she just always, she wanted to be surrounded by her children at all times, 24 hours a day. She didn't care if we were doing anything or not. She just wanted us to be there. I'll mention a few things I'm thankful for. So I'm glad that she got to see us grow up. She got to see her grandkids. I'm glad that she got to go when she was ready to go. So a lot of people don't get that, but she was ready. And maybe you could read this part.
This one?
Yeah, the last one.
Okay. So I'm finished for Steve. I thought about what advice I have for people here who still have their parents that will help them when the time comes. And my advice is this: give lots of kisses to your mommy.
That's it. Thank you. Okay, next up is Dina. So Dina, you heard from Auntie Sonia previously, and Dina is her daughter.
So I'm the eldest of Sonia and Carl's daughters, and I hope I can get through this. Like all of you, it's sort of coming in waves. My mother already said a lot of what I was going to say, but I realized recently that Fabienne, who unfortunately is not here today, she's a month younger than me, so she knew Saroj and all of you very well too. We were 6 when Saroj arrived in the U.S. And yeah, I think that was the mid-1960s. So Saroj was a major part of our lives growing up. She was our first family, I would say, and she was there through everything, even our crazy kitty birthdays. I see Saroj in the background putting up with all of us. I have some funny memories that I remember. I'm going to talk about my childhood memories mostly, because those are things that probably none of you know about. But Fabienne reminded me recently that that Saroj lined us all up in Janine in her apartment upstairs from us, literally in a row, with a ice cube, a needle and thread, and pierced all our ears. And we were probably only 7. And I think when she got to Susie, you could corroborate this, she was 2, that I think Saroj managed to do only 1 ear, is that right? Before Susie started to cry. So I don't know when the second ear got pierced, but maybe you could tell that story. So that's one of my memories. And I just remember that every time Saroj went to India, she would come back. She was at all of our holidays, Thanksgiving, Christmas. And one of my earliest memories was of her wrapping us all in saris. So Fabienne and I, there's actually a picture of us as little beings being wrapped beautifully in a sari. And wow. So I felt like, I think it took me many years to realize how culturally rich my upbringing was, because Saroj was a big part of it. And of course, there were copious amounts of food. Saroj would always arrive with lots and lots of food, and if not, she would take over our kitchen,
And I remember in Great Barrington, my mother's nodding her head, and echoing my mother, it would be like, out of the kitchen, all of you, out of the kitchen. I would remember that. And I have fabulous memories of Saroj standing over a hot stove making puris for us. And she eventually taught my dad how to make puris, and because she knew my father loved them, she would always make them when she would arrive. And one of my other memories around food, this is an early memory. I think, and Mom, you can corroborate this, I have a memory probably of going to Saroj's dorm room and her cooking some huge meal for us on a hot plate. And we all crowded into that little room. And for all I know, that may have been my first taste of Indian food. And I am very spoiled. One of my other childhood memories is of Saroj and my father sitting at the table, Saroj having brought hot peppers. And the two of them munching the hot peppers with my father's tears streaming down his face, sweating, and the glee and smile on his face. I'm trying to think. Oh, and I have one other memory I absolutely want to share. I think there were a couple winters before the Buick story. Saroj drove a pea green Dodge Dart. And so there were a couple winters, I remember that car sitting on blocks up in Great Barrington. And I guess eventually my parents bought that car, and that was the car I learned to drive on up in Ithaca. And I believe Mia may have learned on that car too. So it's really amazing to me how much Saroj was a part of our lives. She endured long Greenwood concerts. There are pictures of her at Greenwood for the concerts that would go on past midnight of kids playing music, and she was there. She was there in Cummington, like my mother shared that story about. I didn't remember that about, I vaguely remember that story about Saroj it was like a little yellow house in Cummington, Mass. But she was there through everything in my childhood. So I just briefly, let me see. The big thing that I wanted to say, Saroj was so much a part of our life, and I'm still trying to also absorb the fact that she has left us. But I do want to say she was tough. She had, let me read my notes here. I felt like Saroj was a force of nature. She had so much courage, and there was a kind of, just even in the way she was with all of you, growing up, seeing her children, how she raised you, there was a kind of tough love. And I think her sense of reality, I don't know how to say this, but above all, she loved us very extraordinarily, and her priorities were very straight. She, I don't know how to say this properly, but I just felt like she infused us with a sense of responsibility. I certainly see that in how she raised her children, and love for each other that I think is rare. One of the things that's been so inspiring to me is to see how you co-raise your children. It's so seamless, and it's just so beautiful, and I feel like it's so infused with Saroj's love. It feels like a continuation of her big love. So I just wanted to say that, and and through everything that she went through, her overarching love for all of us was very apparent. And she was quite an example for all of us, certainly for me, in how to live a good life. So thank you all.
Thanks, Dina. Next, my brother Michael, is going to be speaking for our cousin Anand, who sent a note.
Thank you. And again, thank you everyone for coming up to showing up for my mom. This is from my cousin Anand. My earliest memories of Saroj Bua were her coming to Delhi to visit her mother, her mother, who lived with us. The house was buzzing with excitement about her arrival days before she came. The laughter and cheer she would bring, and of course, as kids, the American chocolates we could not get then. The day before her arrival, basi parathas, which literally translates to stale parathas, were made because that was her and my father's favorite dish. Sitting in the winter sun around Amma with Saroj Bua chatting and laughing is one of my most vivid childhood memories. She and Moni Bua were my first port of call in America since the day I arrived in 1993. Her home was not only always open to me, but was my home away from home. She was always ready for good gossip, made my favorite aloo puri and parathas, and made me miss home a lot less. Preeti and I spent a lot of time with her in New York, and Preeti would always joke that she always knew whose side Bua was on. She had a special love for me that I always felt was rooted in the fact that Amma was one of the most special persons for both of us. I shared a room with Amma for my first 18 years, much like she did too. When I last saw her in Florida over Thanksgiving in 2022, she repeatedly whispered to me that she really misses her mother, and my mother as well, knowing that I fully understood what she meant. Saroj Bua was the trailblazer in our family. She had a difficult childhood in so many ways, but never let it stop her from achieving her potential or hold any grudge against anyone. She managed a home and raised 4 kids in America with a spirit I have not seen anyone else do. While the Sandberg kids are lovely now, let me assure you that their home was the original WWF wrestling venue. The diversity of friends and the love her friends, not just her family, have for her is a testament to the remarkable human being she was. The love and tenderness with which each of David, Stephen, Michael, and Shayna have been along her side through her medical issues is because of the superhuman mother she was. Coming to America, I will never be the same for me, as I will not be able to meet her in person. But a little bit of the Saroj Bua spirit lives on in me, even if as an inspiration for the person I should be. Thank you. For myself, I think 22 years ago, when my father died, I was unable to speak. And I did a year and a half, actually as on request, and I've conducted about 60 funerals for people in the military, but it's just a lot harder when it's your own mother. My mom was my best friend. I was pretty antisocial growing up, and when I went to Buffalo first time around, my first semester, I failed 4 classes, got an A in another. So my second semester, because you're only allowed 4 makeups and replacements, I used it all up. 3 Bs and an A minus. But literally a year of school, half a year wasted. And my mom made me take the minimum to make sure I don't screw that up again. After Buffalo, I wasn't enjoying myself. And 2 years in, I come home. I'm supposed to leave the next day, and I told my mom, I don't want to go back. So she said, she's looking at me, and she's like, what do you mean you're not going to go back? And I'm like, I just don't want to go back to Buffalo. So then she told my dad, Seymour, take him down into the city. He has to register for classes. We're going to keep you busy, Michael. That was her plan. So I registered for classes, and when you don't have a plan, the most you can get is part-time. So my first semester, I took 3 classes at Baruch, 3 classes at Hunter College, because she wanted to make sure I was busy. And then she said, you get in too much trouble because you think too much. So she said, you need a job. And she was paying for everything. She was paying for my train ride into the city. She was paying for my tuition. And back then, lunch was pretty cheap. But she said, you're going to have a job. So I worked in college. After that, I was able to transfer into one school. I didn't attend Hunter except for that first semester. But she made me take no less than 18 credits. And then she said, what's the most you can take? And she's like, I want to get my value. So, so I wound up averaging 22 credits a semester, working 30 hours a week, because my mom's like, that's going to keep you out of trouble. That's going to, and it worked. Then she's, one day she because I was very close to my mom. She was my best friend. And my father had a little more tact than my mom did. So my mom is just like, Michael, I'm not going to lie to you. The problem's you. You have a very antisocial. So I want you to stop being an ass and make some friends. And I'm like, oh, and then she's like, Michael, it's very easy because I've seen that. I went to Buffalo with you. It's you. You push everybody away because you love spending all your time with your family, and that's not healthy. You spend a lot of time with us, but you have to have friends too. So I'm like, okay, just something, okay. And I'm like, I have a couple friends. She's like, you have 2. And I like both of them. But at the same time, I've seen you be obnoxious since you were young. And it's just like, yeah, some of them were, some of the people in your school, I didn't like at all. I didn't like any of them, to be honest. But mostly it's you. So, I made friends, pretty quick. I had a pretty big group of friends. And, my mom was just, she was tough. She was direct. She's like, okay, I like these guys. 1996, I'm in the garage. My friend Juan, he was storing his motorcycle at my house, and we're working on his motorcycle. It hadn't been working for a while. So my mom, the way it was a Scarsdale house, and it was a 3-car garage where my dad had pushed back the basement wall, so one behind the other. So we were working in the spot where my mom would park. She pulls up, and she's wondering what the hell's going on in the garage, but all good. So then she comes in, she's a little bit dazed. So, Juan's very respectful. Hi, Mrs. Sandberg. And I'm like, Mom, what's going on? And she looks at us, and she's just, she said, I just got a diagnosis for cancer. And she's like, I'll be fine. And then we're like, Juan's like, oh, okay. So, and he knew the phrase benign. So he's like, so it was benign? And she's like, no, they told me I have 2 to 5 months to live, but I'm not ready. And at the time, it's just, from anyone else, you think, holy shit, but with my mom, she's literally like, I'm not ready. And she made it through, second time. I think the first time she got 3 to 6 months, and she lasted 10 more years. So that was 1996, 26 years she lasted 27 years after that. And, she was tough. David brought it up. It was a casual thing with no notification until because David at least would tell my mom. I'd walk in with 7 people, and Mom, hey, they're coming for dinner, or Mom, or dinner's done. Mom, can you make something for us? Okay, sure, and she was a dominant figure for me in my life. We brought it up between Steven's friends, David's and mine. And you guys remember, there were a couple times where we had 14 or so people. Most of the days we barely hit 10 or 11, but there were a couple times we had 14 people just have to eat. So my mom, everyone's coming in, big guys, we're all young, sweaty, disgusting, and my mom would be ordering people around, moving it. Seymour sits there, and then my dad would sit right in the middle of 12 people sweating all over him in the most disgusting fashion. But she's like, that's his seat, and just like she's moving people around. And it was she just had a presence. She really had just such a dominant presence. For me, I'm going to miss her. She, only time I ever saw a real, Like we fought all the time, but that was just part of our relationship. And just the only decision point later in life was 2000. I was working at Citigroup, and I moved. I was structuring derivatives. Like I started on the accounting side, started structuring derivatives. I remember my cousin Vivek bought me a book, Futures, Options, and Swaps, which they were impressed when I brought it in on day one, because I got in the job and I was starting in June, and then my birthday was right before, so he handed me the book, brought it in, and everyone was pretty impressed that I came prepared. So we wound up merging, the big Citigroup merger, where back then it was the biggest company in the world. So they did all these mergers. I was living in Tribeca for months. They put us up in hotels because they had to do this merger properly. I get a massive, and I'm 25 years old, and I get a $50,000 cash bonus plus another 50 if I stay on that same bonus if I stay a year. So my dad pulls me aside. He's like, Michael, you should leave. And I'm like, what? And he's like, and immediately it took to me. He's like, in the 50s, when Western Europe was super cheap, I was able to travel everywhere on nothing. Eastern Europe is an opportunity. And so I bring it up at dinner. I'm like, and I had to, I'm like, hey, Mom, I decided I'm doing this. And she's like, no, you're not. She's like, you're not leaving your job. And then my father's just, he didn't speak much because, everyone knows him, remembers. He could speak a few words in the morning, and after that it was a whisper when he spoke. That's just how his voice had never really recovered in strength. So my father's like, I think it's a good decision. And then, my mom's like, Michael's an idiot who's doing well. Very directly. She's like, why are you giving him this advice, Seymour? So they're fighting over it. And, of course, I'm 25 years old, so whatever. Next day I give notice. And I just mentioned to my mom, I gave notice. And she's like, well, how'd they take it? I'm like, I have a meeting with, Heidi Miller was our CFO, and she scheduled a meeting with Mike Carpenter, who's the head of the investment bank. And he's like, this is the stupidest thing I've ever heard of. You're actually leaving after you just got recognized. And my mom, she fought it up until the day I was done. It was as though it never happened. Michael, have the best trip. I hope you stay as long as you can. The only rule is you have to be home before Thanksgiving. Because, you guys remember, Thanksgiving was the holistic day. Everyone in our family, you can't miss Thanksgiving. 6 months, seeing everything for $4,000 in Europe. And that was paying for me and half the time a date. And, best trip I ever had, best decision point. But that was the only real time where my mom aggressively disagreed. But she was tough. I mean, I appreciate it because she was there was no animus. She was just blunt. She was blunt. She'd always just say what she's thinking. And, usually if you're the black sheep of the family, it could be a little tougher. But since we fought all the time anyway, it was okay. It was tough. When I got married, 2003, 2002, 2001, my dad died. In depression the whole year, so was my mom. I had started dating Michelle, and I can't get out of depression. I go to basic training in the military just to get away. That got me out of depression. So while I was away, I didn't even realize Michelle had been spending a lot of time with my mom while I'm away. And I come back, and I decide I'm going to marry Michelle in August. Great, I got the ring. So she already had the ring ready. She already had the ring ready. She had already had the ring ready for Michelle. I'm like, what? She's like, yeah, I got it several months ago. And she's like, I've been dropping hints of what you have to do, and I'm like, I had no idea she'd been dropping hints. And, just for anyone else, it might seem overbearing, but that was just, she was overbearing in a good way. She was just a dominant individual. It's just, a lot of people talked about that. For me, she was my best friend, and I'll miss her. Thank you.
Thank you, Mikey. Next up, Usha Masi. This is my mother's cousin, sort of.
Hello, everyone. Can you all hear me? Yes. Okay. I'm Usha, Saroj's long-lost cousin from Toronto. I was approached by Shayna, and then after a few days, Stevie called if I was going to say a few words. And I said, oh my God, what are you getting me into? It's not easy shoes to fill. But I got the courage. This is my first time ever speaking with a mic in front of me, but please bear with me. Thank you. My thoughts for the time we spent together, which was at least twice a year, in Toronto, Canada, or in New York. And of course, many holidays we had together over the years. We were born in the same house up in the Himalayas, small town called Mussoorie. Magic of joint family. Even though I was so much younger and she had moved to Bangalore, there was a lot of constant talk about her. And we were always reminded to follow her footsteps, which almost turned out to be envious feeling. She was just smart, I believe, I guess, from very childhood. Like, she was probably in her teens when she moved, but I was just always, in our household was my mother, my parents always talked, and we have to just follow and be good like her. Anyway, it's such an honor to see that even at that young age, she had left remarkable mark on the family. We reconnected when I moved to Toronto, and her dad, my uncle, was visiting, and he wanted to visit us in Toronto because he was always connected with us back home. Every year we were together. And then, since then, we had an amazing time ever since. Gigi, elder sister, that's what it means. But more like a mother, a friend, a confidant, and of course, Kasut, which is evil mother-in-law. That's what she was to me. She truly knew how to enjoy life to the fullest. An avid reader, always ready to discuss and dissect the last novel she finished. Shopping. You just had to mention, and then you shop till you drop. Live theater or an Indian show playing in Toronto or anywhere, and of course, movies, nothing to be ever missed. One of the greatest cooks, I know it's been repeated, but this is my thoughts. One of the greatest cooks with chef's quality, always cooking for an army, and never in small batches, even if there were just a few to eat. And not to forget her world-famous pina coladas. Connoisseur of dining, fine dining, and the next thing, lining up for buffet lunches and dinners. Even many picnics we had carried a home-cooked curry. We called it bhaji on the beach. I guess the people who know Hindi, they will understand. Many unforgettable knitting sessions, competing who will finish the project first. Sewing sessions. Once I mentioned by mistake a fabric shop nearby. Then there was no end. To designing, sewing, and even shop associates were so happy to see us every time we walked in. Yeah. Playing cards had to be with real money. And never ending late nights, but every time I lost, she felt bad and found a way to always pay me back. Motherly instinct that was. Few times I rather we had pleasure to driving 8 to 10 hours with her going to New York or coming back to Toronto. All four monsters, kids in the back seat, getting restless and bored. This is true. She would try to control them by reaching with one hand to hit them and driving 100 miles on the expressway with the other. A truly hair-raising experience. Only Saroj could accomplish. It is true. And they would not laugh if it wasn't. Her professional expertise really came in handy when I was expecting. She just so happened to call to see how things were. I had developed complications, so once she asked Prem, my husband, he was getting ready for a New Year's Eve party. I was in a bed rest and he was getting ready to. He was ordered to cancel and rush me to the hospital, which of course he did, and baby Sonia was born. Of course, Prem, excited not so much about the baby, but his party, which he still managed to attend, being a new. It was like so quick, it had to be done so quick, so anyway. Again, when Sonia was coming home from hospital after a month's stay, Saroj Gigi flew in to help me with all four kids in tow. And in a stormy, middle of the storm, snowstorm. A new side of Sandberg kids emerged, amazingly. They could be gentle and friendly, to sit in a line, to hold the baby Sonia, and take turns, which helped us bond till this day. I also had the pleasure of hosting my niece and nephew from England over the summer holidays. Once she found out, 4 of Sandberg kids also had to join. 7 kids in total of under 12 years old, which became a joint family annual event for many years. It was a challenge, but all worked out in the end. And it gives me such a pleasure to see these monster kids turned into gentle giants. Sorry if I'm really... We had 2 visits to Florida last year and had an amazing time. Back to our staple food and conversing in our Hindi language. One trip she was resting and I had to leave for the airport. As I gave my hug and said a goodbye, she mentioned that I can't leave and I had to eat. I assured her I was good and I did eat already. Her prompt answer, it can't be true. As she did not join us to eat together. This was a hospitality and presence of mind totally intact and mind-blowing. When reflecting once again, I can't believe now how much fun we had, and a 24-hour day lasted 36 to 48 hours with no tiredness, just like a ever-ready battery. There was nothing in life she didn't enjoy to the fullest. Usually, you are a jack of all trades, but she was truly a master of all. Gigi is not among us, but her presence will always be with us. Her magnetic power and smile will never be forgotten. She was a strong pillar and kept everyone who came in touch as part of her family for the rest of her life. Never met anyone with so much determination and dedication towards everyone. Gigi, your everlasting legacy will always be with us. Amazingly, I see Saroj in all these 4 kids. Keep it up and stay blessed. Thank you all. The great times we had, it brings a smile, and now and always will. I feel lost without you, your cousin Usha. Thank you.
Okay, the next one is the last scheduled speaker, my sister Shayna. Afterwards, as I mentioned before, if you want to say something, you can come up. Shayna's first going to speak for Preeti. I didn't really introduce properly before, but Anand, who Michael spoke for, is our first cousin. He's my mom's brother's son, and then Preeti is his wife, and they live in Hong Kong now, I believe. Singapore. Okay.
Okay. So this is what Preeti had to say. This is actually what she sent me right after hearing that Mom had passed. And then later on, she asked me if I would read it to everyone. We are deeply saddened to hear the news of our dearest Saroj Bua passing away, but we celebrate her indomitable life and spirit. She brought the whole family together in a very special way. She made it so effortless and natural to have 24 people of 3 generations under one roof, and had her own unique way to connect with each of us. She was as authentic as they come, sassy, spirited, fiercely independent, witty, warm, open, honest, and real. She was ahead of her time as a role model, and for me and Maya, a woman who did it all. Maya's her daughter, a woman who did it all at home and outside without much fuss and fanfare. I will miss her sparkling eyes and her twinkling smile and ever-embracing spirit of one and all. She was a second mother-in-law to me and always welcomed me in the home as family. Her love for Anand was endless, and she never failed to tell me how lucky I was to marry him. That he had it all and was as good as it gets in the Prakash family. I will miss her, but I'll carry her always in my heart. Excuse me one second. No visit to the US was ever complete without meeting Saroj Bua. She was lucky to have her brood next to her. No one has ever looked after their parents the way I have seen the Sandberg children do. Her blessings will carry you all through this lifetime and many more to come. One is not born a woman, but becomes one. Saroj Bua embodied this more than any woman I knew. Sending you all my deepest condolences, love, and hugs. May Bua's spirit flourish and rejoice in its new abode as it continues to inhabit each of us. That's from Preeti. So, this may be a little choppy, both in terms of how I go from one thing to another, maybe breaks for a few tears, or to breathe. Michael and I were talking the other night about just in tears about how do we begin to speak about Mom? Where do we possibly start, you know? And even sitting here, listening to everyone, stories just keep on coming into my head that I want to share, just things that help round out who and how Mom was as a person. So I'm going to start by saying that it took me a long time to really understand my mom. And in the last decade, I've grown to understand her a lot more. We've both mellowed out, and that helped. And in the last many years, we grew to have a shared and known love to one another, respect, friendship, and affection. You know, as a little girl, my mom was my mom. I loved her and wanted to be by her side. And I got to make pories alongside her and roll the dough and have her tell me that I need to watch and learn as she cooked, which meant I couldn't write anything down if I asked her how something was cooked. It just meant that I was supposed to know this much of this much of this, and I'm just going to remember that for cooking any Indian dish. So with that said, I have a few Indian dishes that I insisted on making her quantify how much of this spice or that, and I wrote down, and that's what I know how to make. And, you know, regret not learning the way that she did from her mother, which was just watching and learning, I guess, and figuring out how all these spices work in these quantities. I have as a little girl, we'd clean the counters after dinner. We'd watch Charlie's Angels and Fantasy Island and Dynasty, which I was way too young to be watching, but followed by the Colbys. But that was our girl time, and I'd sleep beside her sometimes, or often. She'd like that a lot, and she'd always want to cuddle me. She was really, really affectionate, always, and really wanted to cuddle me and always wanted to get her feet right by mine. They were like ice cubes, and she always wanted to warm up her feet by mingling them with mine, which I did not care for. And, you know, as a little girl, like many, I would try on her high-heeled shoes, and I can still picture my favorite ones. And remember her, this beautiful, like, blue-green sparkly eyeshadow that she'd wear that's probably in some of these pictures when she was getting really, really dressed up. Nidhi shaking her head. She remembers. I love that. And always look at her makeup. I'd be with her as she would iron her saris for work and for parties, and help her fold them and put them away in a closet just dedicated to saris and petticoats and blouses. You know, there are all these little memories of her counting when we got home from school, because we had to drink milk 3 times a day, and we each had our cups and lining our cups on. And when it turned into glasses, I got the baby glass still. All my brothers got bigger glasses, and her counting so that we would drink our milk. By the time I was a teenager and probably preteen, we went through a little rough patch that lasted quite a while into my 20s, at least. And you know, I think a lot of you probably remember that. You know, I think I'm a lot like my mom in some ways, and big dominant personality at times, and really willful and stubborn at times, and, you know, wanting to do things my way or independently. And my mom was very, very independent and the one with the plan, and I had my own plans. It was, in my late 20s that I started to come out of it, and my mom and me both changed a lot. However, like, things are always more complex than these black and white memories that you store. I was reminded really through looking at pictures at first and going through her old letters and finding a letter that I wrote her when I was in college at Bates, which is part of the time that we were not getting along. And that even when we were not getting along, there was tons of love and affection. There was never a time of not speaking. There was always I love yous. And seeing my letter to her is filled with, you know, being thankful to her for her letter and for sending me a sour cream cake, which she was famous for, sending me one of those at college because I said everyone else is getting care packages and I'm not getting care packages. And I was so happy to get her letter and wanted her to know that I love her too and I miss her every day. But this is at the height of us not getting along, like really at the height of it. There's pictures of relaxing on the couch and still my legs are draped over hers and us relaxed and smiling and talking to someone across the room. And that's how it was, I guess, with both of us and with my mom, is she was feisty. She was generous and she was wonderful and she was so caring. And she just was mind-blowing, but she was also really feisty and she could have a little bit of a sharp tongue, and she was honest to a fault at times, and kind of in line with what Usha Masi was saying, you know, she'd, you know, she was still, and what one of my brothers was saying, she was still very Indian, and she would pick up what we call a chappal, like a, yeah, you know, she's always threatening. It's a footwear piece and a sandal. And she was always threatening us with the chappal. She'd take it off. If you guys don't behave, she may have cut a television cord once or twice when people didn't come to dinner quick enough and being really frustrated with all of us. So, you know, she was a complex person. She was the most complicated person I've ever known. And you know, I still think that our time not getting along was in large part, you know, no regrets, it is what it is, but it's in large part due to my own maturity level at that time. My being young and even through my 20s, like, sorry, Ryan, wherever you are, but newsflash, at 18, you may be legally an adult. Oh, there you are, my love. You may be an adult, but you're not necessarily that mature. And that may go on for another decade, or, you know, who knows. And what it took was me becoming a woman. And now a mother, to relate to her in so many ways, to see her differently, even before I could directly relate with some of those experiences, and some I never will. What I realized is that I've, you know, by my early 30s was, and I think it took her mellowing out a little bit too, but what I realized was that I had never known anyone like her. And at least I'm lucky enough that to be so acutely aware of it since that time, to start feeling so aware and so lucky to be hers and to be so in awe of her. And that awe only grew as I grew up, and more and more, and started again to become a mother and could really understand that the load that I thought she was taking, that was already just unfathomable to me, was so much larger than I thought it was. She was so strong. She had such a will for life. I mean, her surviving is testament to how, not that I don't know why, but I mean, like, to this degree, how much she wanted to live. You know, she survived so much. It's unbelievable, to the degree that, I mean, there's so many stories, but to the degree that her friends, you know, had a joke that she was like a cat with 20 lives. She was just always surviving some near-death experience. And some of them would be as kind of silly and random as, getting stuck in a torrential rainstorm, having a loaner car because it was at the tail end of her driving. And so she had a loaner car while her car got fixed from a silly accident. And, with a keyless car, and none of us were very used to that at the very beginning. And so she thought she had turned it off. And in fact, till the end, she swears that she did turn it off, but it rolled back. Like, she will not give in on that. She did turn the car off, but it rolled back. She got knocked down when she was trying to park the car in front of the house, and she got caught under the tire. Her arm got caught under the tire, and luckily her phone was nearby enough that she called Auntie Bunsry, her best friend, and Auntie Bunsry called me, and I came rushing up, and the neighbors somehow heard her in this crazy storm with their windows rolled up as they were going into the garage. And at the hospital, they told her, yes, she'll have nerve damage. Hopefully the sensations will all come back. It'll take 6 months at least. Well, 5 days later, we're at California Pizza Kitchen celebrating her birthday with all of her friends. And Mom is laughing and having a good time and telling everyone the story. She was with a cane at this point, but telling everyone the story completely straight-faced about how, she had put it in park, but the car just started rolling back. And so she just thought she'd jump back in the car and stop it. Like, completely straight-faced, this woman was gonna jump back in the car. And that is amongst one of the many lives she has had, even though she had hypothermia. But, that is gosh, she survived so much stuff. It's her sheer will to live. It's like she doesn't think that there's another way. As I got to be older, and even with Mom declining, and with now joining the New York work world and taking care of Mom also for portions of the year, so that she could be around and still be with all of her friends playing cards and doing their lunches. I think a lot of different kinds of stress got to me, and I could feel quite overwhelmed and would get a little testy and sharp. And it helped me realize also that that a lot of the time that I wasn't getting along with my mom, well, this lady she was my mom, so I didn't think about it, but this was a woman who was making her kids breakfast, going to work, coming back and bringing us snacks, taking my dad to physical therapy, coming back, actually making sure there was dinner for us, taking my dad to physical therapy, and always home cooked. But then at that time, maybe like some pizzas and Kentucky Fried Chicken came into the mix a little bit more. And then coming back, getting herself to radiation therapy, coming back, putting us all to bed, and doing charts till the wee hours in the morning, just to start it all over again the next day. And she was always present in any of those phases. I never really remember thinking of my mom as being distracted. She was always present. And always, like always and always and always, she was just a present person. She always had this kind of, this twinkle in her eyes, and this, like, she was where she was. But, I can imagine that that's pretty stressful, and that may make you not textbook perfect mom all the time, and that may make you a little overwhelmed underneath it all, and a little sharp here and there, and a little frustrated here and there. And I've dealt with the tiniest bit of that and find myself, in similar places sometimes. Four kids, under 13. A few years ago, my mom said to me, she was a humble person. She didn't brag a lot, and that's kind of because she really didn't have a great sense of herself, of what anyone else could see. Like, she didn't have a great sense of it, of her accomplishments, that they were really big accomplishments, and you could focus on any part of her life for that. So she said to me in amazement a few years ago, Shayna, I think back. I think seeing me now as a mom and all that, I think back and I don't know how I did it. I can't believe I did all of that. I don't know how I did it, but I did all of that. I did it. I said, yeah, Mom, that's what we're trying to tell you. Like, we've been trying, like, you should be really proud of yourself. Like, yes, you did it. You did a lot, Mom. Which is just, like, never really, like, the light bulb just never really went off about that. And part of that may be because she did have it tough in India. I think David mentioned about it being tough to be a dark-skinned woman coming to America. Well, it was very tough to be a dark-skinned woman in India at that time as well. And, she may not have felt that she had the most privileged place, and that could have been her own hang-up, who knows, in her family. But these were the kind of things that, we all carry with us full time, and maybe that's why she didn't see herself for all these accomplishments. Yet, she was born with a certain super strength. She really was. She was born with such an extroverted nature. Maybe that was part of her super strength. It was how much she loved people and community and the energy. Like, she, I had in my notes also that she was a force of nature. She was a force of nature, not just for surviving everything that she did and consistently surviving, but just the energy she could bring to a room. I felt it yesterday. I was telling Mohini, my cousin, that I feel her all around now. But while she hasn't been able to speak a lot in the last several years, just little bits, but not like how she was, like, super loquacious. It feels a lot quiet. Like, you could just really feel the difference without her energy. Just the energy that she would bring to just sitting in a room. Like, I feel like it would, just by nature of her being there, would encourage, communion and laughter, and it's just a crazy thing to have that not present in the same way anymore. So this is where it's going to get really choppy because there's so many things that, I want to share just a few stories that illuminate things. So this is the segmenting part. She did take us everywhere, and she traveled the world in general. She was a really, really well-rounded traveler, passionate about culture, passionate about people, passionate about different food. She wasn't just an amazing Indian cook. She could cook, anything. She learned French cuisine from a close friend that was mentioned, Janine. She just watched someone cook, and there we go. She learned to cook that dish. So our dinner table looked like a hodgepodge of spaghetti and meatballs. I didn't like red meat when I was little, so there'd be some chicken for me. Also some Indian food. It was just like, just anything and everything on the table all joined together. And those were her specialties. She was known for her spaghetti and meatballs. She was known for her pot roast by friends. that would, especially a lot of David's friends that would come every Sunday for the spaghetti and meatballs, pretty much, and us, I hope. She was, she had a super strength of being there for people. And besides obviously being there for us and our dad, she was there for a lot of her friends who were her family. They really, she didn't draw a lot of divisions. Like when she cared so deeply for so many people, when she got to know you, if you reciprocated and wanted that relationship, that was it. You're in. It's a big, big family. She had very little judgment. She offered advice, and as I've been hearing stories from a lot of my aunties, over text message since she passed, so often people say, that she'll be so missed, and she listened so well, and they were thankful for the advice that she gave. That's not something I immediately, can connect that same way, but it's so nice that that's who she was as a friend. It rounds out so many other parts of her. She was very brave, and she was also very scared. Being terminally ill twice and having 4 little ones, she was scared often of not being around. Yet she was this person that worked through sheer inertia. I don't know what drove her, but no one could just put one foot in front of the other like her. She would adapt to anything. She'd have a plan. To be honest, sometimes she'd be a bit of a stress ball with certain stuff. Like I threw a lot of parties with her. I was her helper throwing parties. And man, there'd be after that, she'd be like, "Oh, that was a great success. I think that went really well. I think when should the next party be?" And I'd be like, "Oh man, you got to give it some time," because right before was so hectic and her, kind of screaming orders around, and but she never really remembered that part of it. Her nature was to not be scared, though, and to just try new things and go with the flow. We went to, Michael unfortunately missed this trip, but David and Stephen and myself and my mom went to India when I was in my mid-20s, I think, and we got to spend a good amount of time there. And David had to go back after a few weeks, and Stephen and myself and my mom went to Mussoorie, which is at the foothills of the Himalayas where my mom grew up, between there and Dehradun, which is the next closest city, if you would call it that back then. And we were staying in this little inn with a veranda out onto, a nice stone veranda, and patio doors out to the veranda. And we were, I don't nap, so I was awake, but Stephen and my mom were napping, and I was in the next room, and I come back through the doorway to see a big baboon that had let itself in the room and was towards the foot of the bed. And I'm frozen in the doorway going, "Mom, guys," I wake up. My mom sees this baboon. Sorry. But Stephen, recoils, into the bed. Sorry. But my mom jumps up. She was, I think, still on a cane at this point. Jumps up, grabs for maybe a broom, what was it, or her cane, I don't know, and just lunges at this thing, going, it was a big thing, lunges at this baboon, going, "Hey, hey," and poking away. The baboon goes back for a second, and then goes forward again, exposes his teeth, growls, and goes, "Oh," like that at her, and my mom goes right back at it, going, "Hey, hey," and it goes out the door. Like, that is my mom. Like, that is my mom. That is my mom. She's amazing. She did a lot through her own innate confidence that I don't think she saw in herself, but you have to be able to have done all of that. Her own ability to trust herself, which again, I don't think she was very good at looking at all her best attributes and seeing them, but you know, she did. She trusted herself in so many ways and she made decisions in a very practical way, and also sometimes she was a really good balance of being practical and impetuous. So when I asked her how she decided to come to America and was looking for more information, details on that, she told me that she's like, oh, nothing. Like, my classmates were signing up for something, and I didn't know what they were signing up for. And then I looked, and they were signing up to come to America to study. So I thought, okay, I'll try that too. That's how my mom made some decisions. That's why she was such a great traveler. That's why she loved learning about other people and could make friends anywhere she went. That's why she was really good at adapting, but always had a plan and always was really practical. She had the gumption to take 6 little children between the ages of 5 and 10 to India by herself in 1982. It's nothing like it is nowadays. I have like glimpses of memories of that. And that's crazy. And, you know, she, like David said, she went when she was ready to. It took a lot to get my mom to the point that she was ready to go. It took a lot of illnesses. She had a lot going on, and any one of those, maybe 5 terminal illnesses would have taken her. But my mom waited till, like literally, till she knew that we were all okay, till she got permission from Michael at some point. And it was her time, and she went really peacefully and lovingly. You know, the things I think of the world are so shaped by my mom. I never thought about it before, you know, as it is for all of us, I suppose, that have close relationships with our parents. But, you know, with her past, I just been thinking about it in the last week or two, how, like, you know, as I absorb in bits and pieces the world around me and absorb and let in little pieces of grieving, how much my world is shaped by her, how much my reality is from her or is hers. Like flowers are hers, not all of them, but like hydrangeas, magnolias. She loved roses. The hydrangeas from our tree growing up, those are hers. She loved tulips, and I remember that, and from orchids. All these, anytime I see them, the first filter it goes through is that it's mom's. Those are mom's. That goes for just about everything. That goes for food, that goes for colors. Like everything is through this lens that she shaped. You know, in some ways it's very reassuring, of course, because actually in most ways it's reassuring. It certainly helps to remind that we're me and my brothers, many of you in different ways as well, are shaped by her, and she created these lenses for us that have really, really shaped us, and so she really is really deeply a part of us, a part of who we are individually. She's in there. Sorry. But And this is the kind of things I think of sitting here and listening to stories that have nothing necessarily to do with these thoughts, but I start just flooding with all these little memories. Like, what are the things I will really remember about my mom? It's not necessarily the baboon story or, this story or that story. It's all these little things. It's the fact that it's my mom's hairbrush. It's that she needed to brush her hair first thing in the morning. I remember telling caregivers in New York that, no, she doesn't need to do this first. Just give my mom the hairbrush. She needs to brush her hair. And later on, just brush her hair first. She needs to have her hairbrush first. And her always having it in her purse. And her always telling me to brush my hair. Shayna, you're going to go like that? Can you brush your hair? Or asking me why I wasn't wearing earrings. And saying, you need to put some earrings on. You need to put a necklace on, and feeling like I was basically naked if I didn't put jewelry on to leave the house. It's her, which I think, as some of you may know, my husband certainly knows, kind of maybe to his embarrassment sometimes, it's her bargaining for things, and she definitely passed that down for me, like bargaining for things that don't need to be bargained for. Like, just seeing if she can get like a deal, getting her car fixed. And she's so charming that, she's arguing with this guy that she goes to all the time to get her car fixed until he finally is like, don't come back. And tells her don't come back, and she's arguing her way out, and I'm not gonna come back, that's cheating someone, and you shouldn't cheat someone. And then she comes back, 6 months later, and he's happy to see her because that's how it was. I picture Stephen saying this, but maybe he was the first to bring it to our attention that, like, if you stuck your face in front of mom, she'd be talking to someone. And this is before she was of few words, so she'd be talking to someone. At any time, you could pass your cheek in front of hers, and as she's talking, she'll kiss it and then keep talking. She won't make eye contact with you or anything. She'll just kiss your cheek and then keep going. She's so wonderful. She would constantly, in my early 20s, she was always, like Stephen said, Michael said, calling to see when we're coming. Or Stephen, I don't know, calling to see when we were coming, just nonstop. When are you coming? When are you coming? When are you coming? And it's not like we could go 2 weeks without coming. So this is just like the weekly thing. When are you coming? And then always trying to check in on, she was always very worried that I wasn't talking to my brothers. And when's the last time you spoke to Stephen? When's the last time you spoke to David or Michael? And in the meantime, Stephen and David and myself all lived in the city, and we're seeing each other like twice, 3 times a week, and hanging out with each other's friends and stuff like that. And I always thought, we have our own relationships, Like, I do call them. But her thing was that always, since I was little, was her telling us, really since we were little, and you don't understand what these things are made of or based on, was that we needed to take care of each other. She's always telling us that we needed to take care of each other, that we needed to be there for each other. That was, for some reason, one of her fears, was that we were not going to take care, or that we were just going to grow distant, that we have to remain close, we have to take care of each other. And we have our ups and downs over the years, our little moments here and there. But we do, her passing and her being to that point was definitely a good reminder to nothing really matters except us all taking care of each other and us all being there for each other. I'm very proud to be her daughter. I'm also really proud of how my brothers and I cared for her and loved her. And I'm grateful to Michael for, just like what was said, always keeping her updated, and you think she's asleep, but she's not. Like, she's listening to every word. And to Stephen for always, and she called Michael, when I asked her a few years back, she called Michael her, why she was proud, because she said she's most proud of her kids. And I said, why? And she said for Michael that he was her miracle, her miracle. And look at how well he's done. He's her miracle. And for Stephen, it was, you know, I'm grateful to him for always sitting there so quietly, just holding her hand and being so close and keeping her such good company and always being by her side. And she describes it that he's just such a good person, such a good person. And of course, very grateful to David. Very grateful to David for being so, for taking care of her the way he did. You know, there's no one that could take care of their parent the way David has. And she knew that she was lucky, she knew that she trusted him, and she knew that she was in really good hands. And that had to come from a certain heart and mind. And she was really proud of him for that. That's what she told me. She was proud of how caring and how loving he was, and that he took care of everyone. You know, I really, really hope, and, you know, till she was passing, I was trying to remind her of what an amazing life she has had and how amazing a person she is. And I hope she, you know, really left seeing that about herself. So, choppy, long, but there we go. Lastly, you know, I want to thank everyone for coming here. It's so good to see all of you. You're not just her community. You know, think of like that, you know, onward because we were kids, but you're not just our community, but you're really ours as well. So, you know, really, there's no one else to share her life with now that she's passed than all of you. And she loved you all very, very much. She really did. You truly were her family. Like to open it up as well for anyone that has some words, and then also remind everyone to please join us back at the house, which is very close, for some lunch and just hanging out and more just chit chat and being together. Thank you.
I'll just start this off, and I'm Dave Chandra, and I'm the son of Saroj Devi's sister, and as was mentioned by her kids, I grew up really alongside myself, my brother Vivek. You know, David mentioned that Dr. Devi had 4 kids within 4.5 years, and Vivek and I were right in the middle of that group, and so we were all a crew, and we grew up 15 minutes from them, and so I don't ever remember a time without Masi being a part of my life. And when you hear all the 8 people who've just spoken, words like strength, determination, work ethic, generosity, hospitality, courage, independence, and adventurousness are what come to my mind. And it's so amazing to see one human being embody all of those qualities. And even though Masi, that's a word, there are many words for aunt in the Indian languages. That's one word that means your mother's sister. So that's what I called her. And even though Masi's gone, she lives on. All these qualities that I mentioned are so embedded in all four of her kids. And it's such an honor to be a part of their lives. And, Shana mentioned, the firstborn is always very special in the Indian culture, and this is no exception. As Shana mentioned, David, what a magnificent man he is, and you see Masi's fingerprints all over that. And 30, 40 years from now, we're going to wax poetic for 3 hours about him too. It'll be sooner if he doesn't hit the treadmill. But I think that what I probably saw Masi about 1,000 times, throughout my life. In the last 30 years, I've mostly been living away from New York, and so I only, had not limited interactions with her, but the conversations we had were always about her kids, and it just always showed just the tremendous caring and love that she had for them. She would talk to me a lot about their personal lives, her opinions of what was going on, and I would usually say, yeah, Masi, I agree, and she would say, well, can you go talk to him or talk to her? I'm like, no, I'm not, no, definitely not. I don't want to ever get on your bad side, Masi. I don't ever want to get on their bad side either. So no, that was, I was just, just one funny story. I think Stephen had a girlfriend once. Her name was Sarah, and Masi did not like her at all. And I said, Masi, don't worry. She's like, what if they get married? I'm like, Masi, don't worry. They're not going to get married. And she said, well, how do you know? Why is he spending time with her? Anyway, that old school innocence I loved about her as well. In any case, just an amazing person that we lost, and it really just didn't hit me until last night, rolling in to the family house and just seeing that she's not here with everybody, and it just hit me like a ton of bricks, as I'm sure it has hit all of you the same way. So thank you.
Andy Bunsery. If anybody, Greg got you next. First, NC Bunsery. If anybody else who wants to speak, just raise your hand and I'll.
My dear friend Saroj, she was my closest neighbor when we moved to Scarsdale, and through her I met a lot of family and friends of her. We celebrated all the Diwali dinners together, and it was like we were cooking from morning. She would ask me to come and make puris for her or something, doklas for her. Those were the good old times. She has been my friend since 1985, since we moved to Scarsdale. She just introduced herself because we were neighbors and came to our house. And since then, we've formed a very close bond. She used to talk to me about her kids, and if I had a problem, I would talk to her about my children. And we always, like, she used to compare me with Shayna, because when I was angry or arguing with her, I would say something, and she would put me in my place. You're just like Shayna. We used to play cards till midnight because we were neighbors. She would just walk over, and we would be playing, and sometimes Seymour joined, and Yashwant and Seymour would be watching sports and having a drink. We were always together at all the family functions, all the weddings I've attended. And also we traveled together to Singapore, Hong Kong, and Bangkok. And that was a very, very nice trip. That time Saroj could go all over, and she was really into traveling. Saroj was always out or, with friends or something. So she would call me, or her children would call me to find out where Saroj was. And they thought she was always with me, whether it was daytime or evening. And I still remember that, the phone call from the children. She was very fortunate to have children like David, Stephen, Michael, and Shayna, who looked after her till the end. They did so much for her, and I remember David took her to Florida, and she used to say, David is my Shravan Kumar, because that's what in India, I can't explain more because I used to be the first person she called when she was in hospital, fallen down. All the visit to White Plains Hospital, and when I was sick, she would take me. So it was such a good feeling. Our family, my children, they couldn't be here today. They'll miss her really, really dearly. And hope the kids carry on, and we'll be always there for you.
Thank you, Auntie Bunchery. Next up, Gregory Adams, longtime family friend, wrestling nemesis.
Hey everyone, I hope you can hear me okay. I just want to say a couple words real fast and just express, me being one of many extended family. And from years ago, mid-'80s or so, got real close with Dave, and I would hang out at the house, and soon after be invited for dinner, and on and on. And years ago, and they made me feel like family. And I know for many people here, it was like the heart of this family is unbelievable. And I feel great gratitude. I'm very blessed to be a part of it. And the meals, I can go on and on like everyone. Sunday night basketball, we'd be there for hours and hours until midnight, and then again the next many times in summers it would go on and on and on. And I just needed to say thank you so much to Saroj, Mrs. Sandberg, who treated me like a son, and who would look at me and you'd feel like you were the only one in the world that mattered in a way. And such a sparkle in her eye. while she would look into you. And I got to have a little of that this past April, going down to Boca, and it just was fills your heart. And the Sandberg family, with Mrs. Sandberg being the pinnacle of that passion and love for people, it comes through each and every one of them. And I want to say heartfelt thanks for all those like myself who have been able to be included into this family. And God bless you guys. And God bless Saroj, and thank you all.
Thank you, Greg. Next up, Sonia Agrawal, cousin to the family.
Hi, everyone. My name is Sonia Agrawal. I'm a cousin. You heard my mom, Usha, speak. My dad, Prem Agrawal, wasn't feeling 100%, so he just sent some words. So please imagine me as a 78-year-old Indian man. The first time I met Saroj Gigi, that is what I always called her, was in 1975 when she visited Toronto. But then over the next 48 years, we met at least 50 times. We traveled together on a cruise to Alaska and also to Morocco. Clearly, all of those times are fond memories. Over almost 300 days we spent in Toronto, Scarsdale, White Plains, and traveling across the world, it was the conversations and arguments I cherished the most. She was a strong personality, but so am I. She was like a hurricane when it came to ideas. I used to say to her that for David, Stevie, Michael, and Shayna, why don't you just control them a little bit? And she would laugh at me and say, you must never clip the wings. See, I came from India and I was able to fly, and look how well I've done. What an insight. If you look at all of the kids now, you see them soaring high, just the way she saw it all those years back. She was wise and happy. I was lucky to spend so much time with her. I will always miss her. Thank you, Masi, for everything.
This is from Patricia. She was one of my mom's caregivers and a very close friend of our family. I would just like to thank the Sandberg family for allowing me to take care of my sweet Amaji. It was my utmost pleasure, and Amaji was just my joy when I came to work. I remember when I would put my Amaji to bed, it would be the way the covers had to be just right below her chin, and the pillow being right under her neck. In the morning, brushing her hair and making sure her watch was on. Her times when she wanted sun, and her and I would fight, and I would tell her that David said 10 minutes, and she would say, tell him to come and talk to me. And he would come out and say, Mom, you get tired after you're out in the sun? If you can prove to me that you can walk from the pool to the couch, then you could have more time in the sun. And Amaji would start walking very fast. It was very funny. Or the time when we would give her sweets after dinner, and she would say more. And we would bring her a small piece, and she would then be like, if that's what you're going to give me, don't bother giving me anything at all. And she'd be very upset. Amaji, I will miss you forever. I miss dancing and singing for you, despite what many thought. I love you forever. You are my best friend. Also, David, Stephen, Michael, and Shayna, you have inherited a lifelong sister, and I love you all. Thank you, Patricia. Vivek.
Hi, can you hear me?
So I'm Vivek Chandra, and Saroj Devi was my Masi. And, I guess a couple of things that I wanted to say. There's, and I think it's an Indian expression, where there's room in the heart, there's room at the table, or there's room in the house. And with Masi, there was always room in the heart. And, growing up, I guess, because I think we were at Masi's house, several times a month for years. And I always thought, that's how it is. And that's not how it is. Masi was very special and very unique and very rare that way. And the other thing is that, Masi was enormously wise, but she wouldn't really tell you her wisdom, or even what she would say to you might not even be correct. And the way you would actually get her wisdom would be just to watch her and look at what she did. And that's how, and when you look at what she did, there are lessons I still get from just having watched Masi. Like even today, just hearing about some of the stories, really an amazing example of somebody teaching without talking, And I also wanted to give my wife, Mohini, a chance to, I wanted her to come up and say something, because when Mohini came, Masi was so good to her. And they really had such a nice relationship.
My name is Mohini, and I'm Vivek's wife. And I first met Masi in India at our wedding reception. And she was so caring and welcoming. And I was like, I told her, I'm going to America for the first time. And she's like, don't worry, I live 20 minutes. Just learn how to drive and come anytime. It's like a home away from home. Because she knew during our conversation that I'm a little bit worried about coming to the US first time, but she assured me. And I would spend hours and hours talking to her, and we would watch Bollywood movies, Hindi movies, any program. She would tell me about her past, how she shipped the car, and how she met Uncle Seymour, everything about her. And even though she was not doing well, but she was so good, she would sense everything. One day, David made a besan barfi, that Indian sweet, and I'm like, Masi, how was it? Yeah, it was good, but I think David did not sieve the besan. He did not sieve the flour, and she was so right, and this was last December. She knew what was missing in the recipe. She was such a great cook, and she would she just told me, and I told David, it's right. He's like, yeah, we tried to fix it, but she somehow figured out that something was wrong in that. And the other day, she wanted to eat aloo puri, and it was not ready. And she was feisty at times. And she's like, David, I don't see anything coming, and you tell me that, oh, you will get aloo puri, you'll get this, you'll get that. I don't see anything coming. So I have so many memories of her, and I miss her. She loved each and every one, and she was loved by all. I'm very grateful and honored that I met somebody like her. Thank you.
This is your last chance. Okay. I'll wrap it up with one story that I forgot to tell, and just because I think it's funny. So my mother had like a kind of a complicated relationship with her father, who was by many accounts a fairly difficult person. We call him Bauji. And when my mom and dad were dating, and then she thought they weren't going to marry, so she moved back to India, and then he followed after a year, and they got married. And my mom did not invite her dad. So they had the wedding in Delhi, and he found out at the last minute, and he hightailed it down there, and he joined. But that's that's how my mom was. And another just funny. I just want to throw it in just because. Again, I think it's funny. He was actually a big fan of Hitler, in my mom's words, and so I do like the fact that she married a Jewish guy. But he was pro-Hitler, but not anti-Jewish, which is a whole separate thing. Anyway, and he got along very well with my father. In fact, yes. Okay, so that, guys, I think that's it for this service. The next step is we are having a lunch. Anybody is very welcome to join. If you don't have the address, it's 3 Winfield Avenue in Harrison, New York. And we're all going to head over there now, and you're all welcome to join. Okay? Thank you, everybody, for coming. Really appreciate it.